Rey, Star Wars sequel trilogy, 2015 to 2019. Rey became the central figure of Disney's Star Wars sequel trilogy, first appearing in The Force Awakens 2015. Introduced as a scavenger on the desert planet Jakku, she quickly displayed advanced skills, piloting the Millennium Falcon with expert precision, resisting Kylo Ren's Force interrogation, and later defeating him in lightsaber combat despite no formal training. This stood in stark contrast to Luke Skywalker and Anakin Skywalker, whose journeys required years of discipline and failure. Disney heavily marketed Rey as the first female Jedi protagonist, presenting her as the modern face of the franchise and a symbol of empowerment for a new generation. Supporters praised her as a long overdue step toward gender balance in the saga, but critics labeled her a Mary Sue, an unrealistically perfect character designed more as a representation milestone than as a believable hero. By The Last Jedi, 2017, and The Rise of Skywalker, 2019, debate around Rey had grown into one of the defining controversies of modern Star Wars. For many, she became the earliest and most visible example of woke Star Wars, a character celebrated for progressive ideals, but criticized as political correctness imposed on storytelling. Captain Marvel Carol Danvers, Marvel Cinematic Universe, 2019 to 2023. Carol Danvers' debut in Captain Marvel, 2019, was promoted not just as a superhero origin story, but as a cultural milestone for Marvel. The studio highlighted it as the MCU's first female-led film, building marketing campaigns around themes of feminism, empowerment, and breaking barriers.
You make a movie that is a love letter to women of color. There is an insanely low chance a woman of color will have the chance to see your movie and review your movie.
Brie Larson amplified this framing in interviews, calling for more women in Hollywood and greater diversity among film critics. Disney leaned into this identity-driven push, positioning Captain Marvel as the new face of the MCU following the end of the Avengers' original lineup. The film grossed over $1 billion worldwide, proving commercially successful, but it also became one of Marvel's most polarizing releases. Carol's immense cosmic powers, combined with minimal character flaws or vulnerabilities, led critics to describe her as an idealized girl boss archetype rather than a grounded hero. Many fans felt the focus on political messaging overshadowed character development. By the time she returned in Avengers Endgame 2019 and The Marvels 2023, she had become the definitive symbol of woke Marvel, embraced by some as a feminist icon, dismissed by others as a corporate-driven statement rather than authentic storytelling. Mighty Thor, Jane Foster, Thor: Love and Thunder 2022. Jane Foster's return in Thor: Love and Thunder 2022 was one of Marvel's most heavily marketed woke moments. Disney and Marvel positioned Natalie Portman's character as the long-awaited female Thor, with promotional campaigns highlighting her muscular transformation and presenting the role as a feminist reimagining of the Thor mythos. Instead of simply being a supporting character, Jane now wielded Mjolnir and shared the mantle of Thor himself. The studio leaned into this gender-swapped identity as the selling point, framing her as proof of Marvel's shift toward more inclusive, female-led heroes. In the comics, Jane's arc of battling cancer while serving as Thor is widely praised for its emotional depth. However, the film reduced much of that gravity, prioritizing comedy and spectacle over her personal struggle. Critics argued that her transformation was flattened into a symbolic empowerment story, a character marketed less for her depth and more for her role as a progressive statement. Jane Foster ultimately became a prime example of Disney's broader approach, reframing legacy male roles through a woke lens to emphasize identity milestones over traditional storytelling. America Chavez, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness 2022. America Chavez's introduction in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness 2022 was one of Marvel's first attempts to center a character almost entirely around representation. Her multiverse-traveling powers made her essential to the story, but her identity as a Latina LGBTQ teenager was the real focus of Disney's marketing. The film included deliberate references to her two mothers, making her the MCU's first explicitly LGBTQ hero on the big screen. While this was praised as groundbreaking by advocates for representation, critics noted that America had very little narrative development beyond her symbolic role. She existed less as a fully fleshed-out hero and more as a milestone character, someone included to check identity boxes and signal progress. This approach reflected Disney's strategy of using newer characters to embody diversity first, while leaving character depth and storytelling for later. As a result, America Chavez quickly became part of the woke Marvel debate, where her significance rested more on what she represented socially than how she functioned in the story. Riri Williams Ironheart, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever 2022. Riri Williams was introduced in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever 2022 as a 19-year-old prodigy who built her own Iron Man-style suit. From the beginning, her role was marketed as a representation milestone, a young black female genius stepping into the technological legacy of Tony Stark. Disney used her as proof of Marvel's commitment to building a more diverse roster for the next era. However, Riri's story within the film was thin. Many critics argued that she contributed little to the central conflict and existed primarily to set up her spin-off Disney Plus series Ironheart. Her presence exemplified Marvel's pattern of passing down iconic mantles to younger, more diverse successors. To some audiences, she represented a progressive step forward. To others, she epitomized woke Marvel, a legacy role restructured not for organic narrative reasons, but to prioritize identity-driven succession. Ariel, The Little Mermaid 2023. The live-action The Little Mermaid 2023 became a cultural flashpoint long before release due to the casting of Halle Bailey as Ariel. Disney framed Bailey as a symbol of inclusivity, promoting her as a role model for young girls of color and centering marketing around the importance of representation. Supporters praised the choice as progress, but it also triggered widespread online backlash, with critics arguing that changing the character's race was more of a political statement than a creative one. When released, the film followed the 1989 original story closely, but Bailey's casting remained the central talking point. It earned around $570 million worldwide, a solid return but weaker than Disney's billion-dollar remakes. Internationally, it underperformed, fueling claims that the identity-first marketing limited its reach. Ariel ultimately became one of Disney's clearest examples of how a casting decision can overshadow the film itself, celebrated as a milestone for representation, while criticized as the peak of woke Disney. Snow White 2025. Disney's live-action Snow White 2025 was marketed as a modern reimagining that would reject the romance-driven story of the 1937 classic. Rachel Zegler repeatedly emphasized in interviews that her version of Snow White was not waiting for a prince, but aspiring to leadership and independence. While this was celebrated by some as a progressive update, many viewed it as Disney discarding the heart of its original fairy tale to push a political message. Upon release, the film faced harsh reviews and disappointing box office numbers. Critics cited its heavy-handed focus on empowerment over charm, and online backlash resurfaced around Ziegler's earlier comments dismissing the original. For many, Snow White became the ultimate example of Disney rewriting its classics through a woke lens, prioritizing ideology over timeless storytelling. Kamala Khan/Ms. Marvel, Disney Plus M's Marvel and the Marvels 2022 to 2023. Kamala Khan's debut in Ms. Marvel 2022 was designed to make her Marvel's first Muslim superhero lead. Disney marketed the show as a cultural milestone, building her character around themes of identity, heritage, and faith. The narrative emphasized her Pakistani-American family life in Jersey City, blending traditional superhero tropes with cultural representation. Promotional campaigns highlighted Kamala as a symbol of inclusivity and a role model for younger audiences, particularly Muslim girls who had not previously seen themselves reflected in Marvel's leads. When Kamala returned in The Marvels 2023, she was framed as the enthusiastic, lighthearted heart of an all-female superhero trio alongside Captain Marvel and Monica Rambeau. This reinforced Disney's identity-driven strategy, presenting a multicultural, multi-generational team as the MCU's new centerpiece. Supporters praised Kamala as a refreshing, relatable figure, but critics argued she was written more as a symbolic diversity insert than as a fully developed hero. The box office failure of The Marvels amplified these criticisms, with detractors pointing to the identity-first marketing as proof that audiences were losing interest in what they saw as woke Marvel. Monica Rambeau, Captain Marvel, WandaVision, The Marvels. Monica Rambeau's arc began as a child character in Captain Marvel 2019, before returning as an adult in WandaVision 2021, where she gained powers from Wanda Maximoff's magical barrier. By The Marvels 2023, Monica was elevated to co-lead status, positioned as one of Marvel's most powerful heroes. Disney's framing was clear. Monica was not just a hero, but a symbol of representation, marketed as a strong black woman stepping into Marvel's main roster. Her story was steeped in themes of loyalty, grief, and legacy, but much of the promotion highlighted her role in Marvel's first all-female superhero team-up. This reinforced Disney's emphasis on diversity ensembles as cultural statements. While some viewers embraced her as an overdue addition to Marvel's leading lineup, others criticized the character as underdeveloped and sidelined by corporate agenda. Monica's role highlighted Disney's growing reliance on identity-focused branding, presenting characters for what they represent socially rather than for compelling narrative arcs, cementing her as part of the woke Marvel debate. Cassie Lang, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania 2023. Cassie Lang's expansion into a full superhero role in Quantumania 2023 fit Disney's broader trend of mantle passing to younger, more socially conscious characters. Previously introduced as Scott Lang's daughter, she was reimagined as a bold activist, portrayed as quick to challenge authority and passionate about social justice causes. Disney marketed her as the next-generation face of the Ant-Man legacy, positioning her not just as a daughter figure but as a political voice within the MCU. Her inclusion aligned with the setup for a future Young Avengers team, another ensemble framed around youthful diversity and empowerment. However, the film underperformed at the box office, and critics noted that Cassie's character felt more like a symbolic girl boss insert than a fully realized hero. For many viewers, she represented Disney's formula of reworking legacy characters into socially aware successors, a pattern seen as the company's hallmark of woke storytelling. Valkyrie, Thor Ragnarok Avengers, Endgame, Thor Love and Thunder. Valkyrie, introduced in Thor Ragnarok 2017, was presented as a fierce Asgardian warrior who had survived the destruction of her order. From the start, Marvel promoted her as a symbol of diversity, casting Tessa Thompson, a black actress, in a traditionally white comic role. By Avengers Endgame 2019, she was appointed the new ruler of Asgard, replacing Thor himself. In Thor Love and Thunder 2022, Disney leaned further into her representation by labeling her the King of New Asgard, not a queen, and highlighting her bisexuality in press tours and marketing. While supporters praised Valkyrie as Marvel's first openly LGBTQ superhero on the big screen, critics argued that her identity was emphasized more than her actual character development. Her storyline in Love and Thunder focused heavily on her status as a modern leader, but gave little narrative depth beyond symbolic empowerment. For many, Valkyrie embodied Marvel's growing push to use characters as markers of inclusivity, making her one of the MCU's most cited examples of woke representation. Reva, the Third Sister. Obi-Wan Kenobi 2022. Reva, introduced in Obi-Wan Kenobi 2022, was written as a ruthless inquisitor hunting down Jedi survivors. Disney positioned her as a major new Star Wars villain, with actress Moses Ingram receiving heavy promotion before the show's release. The character was designed as a young black woman in a franchise traditionally dominated by white male leads, and marketing framed her inclusion as part of a larger push for diversity within Star Wars. However, Reva became one of the most controversial figures in the series. Fans criticized her arc as underdeveloped and argued that her screen time overshadowed Obi-Wan and Darth Vader, the show's central figures. Online backlash escalated into debates about whether her role was created to push an agenda rather than fit organically into the story. While Disney defended her and cast her as a bold new representation milestone, critics pointed to Reva as another example of woke Star Wars, where identity politics shaped creative decisions more than narrative needs. Elsa, Frozen 2013, Frozen 2 2019. Elsa, from Disney's Frozen franchise, became one of the studio's most iconic modern heroines. Unlike traditional princesses, Elsa's story centered not on romance, but on self-discovery and independence. The decision to avoid pairing her with a male love interest fueled discussions about her as a feminist role model, and Disney leaned into marketing her as a symbol of empowerment. By Frozen 2 2019, speculation about Elsa's sexuality grew stronger, with fans calling for her to be portrayed as openly LGBTQ. Disney stopped short of confirming this, but allowed subtext to remain, fueling the debate even further. Supporters praised Elsa as a progressive update to the Disney princess archetype, focusing on inner strength and self-acceptance rather than romance. Critics, however, accused Disney of exploiting the speculation for publicity while refusing to commit to clear representation. Elsa remains one of the most significant examples of woke Disney discourse, not because of explicit political statements in the films, but because of how her independence and ambiguity became a cultural talking point beyond the screen. Bo Peep, Toy Story 4 2019. Bo Peep, a minor supporting character in the original Toy Story films, was completely reimagined in Toy Story 4 2019. Previously depicted as a gentle, traditional figure tied to Woody's storyline, she was rewritten as an independent, adventurous, and outspoken leader of her own. Disney highlighted her new design, swapping her dress for practical pants and a cape as a feminist rebranding. Marketing emphasized Bo Peep as a strong female role model, promoting her as proof of Pixar and Disney modernizing their classics for contemporary audiences. While many viewers appreciated the update, critics saw it as an unnecessary reinvention of a familiar character, designed to fit modern feminist ideals rather than maintain continuity. Bo Peep's new persona became part of a wider trend where Disney revived old characters by reframing them as symbols of independence and empowerment. For detractors, she represented yet another example of woke Disney reshaping its own history to align with progressive values. And that's every major Disney female character tied to the woke debate. Heroes and princesses reimagined as symbols of empowerment, diversity, and representation. For some audiences, these choices are long overdue steps forward. For others, they're proof that Disney is rewriting its franchises through an agenda-first lens. What's certain is that each of these characters, whether Rey, Captain Marvel, She-Hulk, or Snow White, has reshaped the conversation about what Disney represents today.